If you have IRS or other tax issues, you may be wondering who you should hire to represent you: a tax attorney or a CPA. And that is a very good question. It's a very natural question, right? Because both CPAs and attorneys and enrolled agents, for that matter, can represent you before the IRS and other taxing authorities, right? So what I'm going to do in this video is sneeze. Actually, I'm not. What I'm going to do in this video is basically explain to you the differences between tax attorneys and CPAs. Actually, let's start with the similarities. I'm going to start with the similarities between tax attorneys and CPAs, how they're like. Then I'm going to talk to you about the differences between tax attorneys and CPAs. And then I'll give you some insight as to what kind of tax professional you may want to work with on your tax relief case. Now, in full disclosure, I'm a CPA who represents taxpayers in all 50 states and around the world, for that matter. U.S. taxpayers who happen to be abroad, right? I represent taxpayers who have significant tax debt before the IRS or their state. In some cases, their local government too, but that was just one case. So my direct competition in this business is, in fact, tax attorneys, right? Who do the same thing. But I'm going to try to be as objective as possible in this video, okay, when comparing tax attorneys and CPAs. Okay, that means I'm not going to take, cheap shots at attorneys, as vicious snakes. I've only seen maybe two with a forked tongue. And I'm going to be I'm going to be transparent, right, about certain things that attorneys can do, such as go to court, that CPAs cannot in general. Okay, so let's start from the top and talk about the commonalities, the similarities that tax attorneys and CPAs share. Okay, number one, they can both represent taxpayers before the IRS. Okay, tax attorneys and CPAs can both represent taxpayers before the IRS. They can defend a taxpayer's tax returns in an audit. They can negotiate a settlement for a taxpayer's tax debt through the offer and compromise program. They can negotiate an installment agreement for a taxpayer. They can get taxpayers into hardship, currently non-collectible status. In fact, whether you work with a CPA or a tax attorney, both of them, when taking your case, will send you what's called an IRS power of attorney. Looks like this. Power of attorney and declaration of representative, and on this form you will designate the particular CPA or tax attorney or enrolled agent, for that matter, that is going to work your case and represent you before the IRS. And you can have multiple, right? Like at my firm, I will generally be on the POA, the power of attorney, up here. And then perhaps I'll have another staff on the POA as well, in case I'm out or they need to handle some routine task or something like this. So both CPAs and attorneys can represent taxpayers before the IRS. Okay. Similarity number two between tax attorneys and CPAs is they both had to pass really, really hard exams in order to obtain their license. In the case of an attorney, they're licensed to practice law. In the case of a CPA, well, their CPA license. For attorneys, that's their state bar exam, right? Which is administered by the states, right? And each state has their, what is this? Each state, has their own bar exam, right? They have kind of different pass rates, and some are, notoriously more difficult than others. With CPAs, that's a uniform CPA examination, right? The CPAs, although CPAs are licensed by their state, just like attorneys are, the CPA exam is a uniform exam that all CPA candidates across the country take. And both of these exams are very rigorous and difficult, right? I'm not going to really get into which one is more difficult. I think probably it just depends on who's taking it. I think for probably people who tend more towards reading and writing, the bar exam would be easier, and people who tend more towards math and numbers, the CPA exam would be easier, right? I think it just really depends on the disposition of the person. In terms of pass rates, the overall pass rate for the bar exam varies between states. It can vary significantly because each state has its own bar exam. Okay, so, but kind of just looking at the most recent results of bar exam results for the most recent bar exam, you can see the overall kind of pass rate. It varies, depending on the state, between, maybe 30% and, wow, Alaska's 75%. That's very high. But I was going to say between 30% and, maybe 50% or maybe even like 70 or 60%. I mean, it varies, right? While for the CPA exam, it ranges between most recently between about 40% and let's say 60%, depending on the exam. FAR is generally known as the more difficult exam, while BEC is generally the easiest. And I guess Reg is pretty easy too, but it varies based on the difficulty of the exam. But and CPA candidates have to pass all 4 of these exams: audit, business, financial accounting, and Reg, which is like taxes. So both exams are difficult, they're tough, and they both, many people fail them, right? It's not like they're easy exams that 90% of people pass. Depending on the type of exam and depending on the state. In fact, the majority of people who take them do fail, at least on the first attempt. Finally, CPAs and tax attorneys are similar in that they're both subject to very strict professional guidelines. Like I said, both attorneys and CPAs are licensed by their state. For lawyers, that's their state's bar, and for CPAs, that's their state's board of accountancy. And every state sets standards for how its attorneys and its CPAs should practice, how they should practice and how they should conduct themselves. These standards include ongoing educational requirements, ethical standards, and various other requirements that may depend on the state. All right, now let's talk about how CPAs and tax attorneys are different. Well, they have different educational requirements, right? Obviously, an attorney has to go to law school. They have to complete 4 years of undergrad and then typically 3 years of law school in order to become an attorney. Okay, I believe in some states that they'll let you take the bar exam and become an attorney without going to law school. But in most states, you got to go through 4 years of undergrad or complete an undergrad degree and complete, the 3 years of law school. So it's at least 7 years of post-secondary education is the path to becoming an attorney for the vast majority of attorneys. CPAs obviously don't have to go to law school, and states have different requirements for how much education CPA candidates need. But all states do require CPAs to have at least a bachelor's degree, and most states require CPA candidates to have at least 150 semester-based post-secondary hours of education, which translates to 225 quarter-based credit hours of higher education. So most bachelor's degrees are 120 semester hours / 180 quarter hours. So this means that to become a CPA in most states, a candidate must have gone through at least 5 years of post-secondary education. So it does require less formal schooling education to become a CPA than an attorney, strictly speaking, at least in most states. Number 2 difference is attorneys can represent taxpayers in criminal matters, and CPAs cannot. Unless they're also a licensed attorney, CPAs cannot be admitted into district court or any other court of law other than tax court. They can be admitted to tax court if they pass the tax court exam. But in terms of representing a taxpayer in a criminal matter in district court, a CPA cannot be admitted there. Yeah, there is no special district court exam for CPAs to represent a taxpayer criminally in district court. You have to be an attorney to do that. So that's one difference, right? So if you're looking at criminal charges, if the IRS has told you or has charged you, if you've been charged with a tax crime, or IRS criminal investigation agents have been talking to you, then you need to talk to an attorney. And they probably wouldn't even just be a tax attorney, right, who does kind of the same things that a CPA might do, like offers and compromise, but specifically a criminal defense attorney who specializes in tax or at least financial matters. Okay, right. So if you've been charged with a tax crime, I can't help you. Okay, you're going to court. You need to talk to an attorney who specializes in criminal tax defense. As a matter of fact, if you've been charged with a tax crime, I don't want to hear about it, because if you tell me about it, I might become subpoenaed. Accountant-client privilege is a thing, but it's largely theoretical and much weaker than attorney-client privilege. Number 3, and this is painting with a broad brush, okay? But attorneys, in my experience, even tax attorneys, generally don't have as much experience with doing tax returns as tax-focused CPAs do, okay? So if you're working with a CPA who holds themselves out as a tax professional, they've probably done a lot of tax returns. Okay. I've personally done thousands of personal and business tax returns in my career as a CPA. While I was at large firms ranging from, big four firms to a large regional firm here in the LA area, I worked on tax returns. Actually, for folks who are probably household names in the entertainment industry and other industries, I've done extremely complex consolidated corporate returns. And of course, in my own tax practice, Choice Tax Relief, we do a lot of tax returns as well for folks who haven't filed in several years. Tax attorneys, on the other hand, generally speaking, and again, this is painting with a very, very broad brush, right? Because there are tax attorneys who do tax returns and that kind of thing. But most tax attorneys that I've worked with do not really prepare tax returns too often. So they generally won't know the ins and outs of your tax return as well as a CPA does, right? And oftentimes, right, people who have tax problems, it's not just the resolution, but it's also preparing some tax returns as well, right? So anyway, so should you hire a tax attorney or a CPA, right? So you're probably going to hate me for this. My answer here is a little bit of a cop-out. But before I get into it, here's a dirty little secret I want to tell you that applies to both tax attorneys and CPAs. Some folks are going to hate me for this. But the reality is, in my opinion, most tax attorneys and most CPAs are wearing too many gosh darn hats. They are jacks of all trades and masters of none, okay? They are not specialized and likely not specialized in handling a case like yours, okay? If you go to a tax attorney's website and you see it's a one-man or one-woman shop, okay, and they do everything under the sun pertaining to tax law. They do audit defense. They do criminal tax audits. They do criminal tax defense. They do residency audits, international tax issues, and more. Chances are they haven't really worked a lot of cases like yours, okay, in which you're looking for someone to represent you, an everyday American or an everyday business owner, who has found yourself with significant amounts of IRS back tax debt, business tax or payroll tax debt, or just individual income tax debt on your 1040. Okay? They probably don't have a lot of experience with that specific kind of case to reach a favorable resolution with the government. In the same vein, if you go to a small-time CPA's website and it's pretty apparent that he or she and maybe their small team does everything under the sun that CPAs can do, individual tax returns, business tax returns, trust and estate tax returns, bookkeeping, payroll, 401k plan audits, R&D, credit studies, tax revisions, audits, compilations, reviews, succession planning. And they sell insurance to boot. How much experience do you think they really have in representing everyday Americans with their back tax debt before the IRS or their state, right? They might do that 5 to 10% of the time. They're doing all this other stuff 90% of the time, right? 5% of their time spent on R&D, 5% on 401k plan audits, 5% on compilate, jacks of all trades, masters and none, okay? Bottom line is, you want to hire a tax attorney, right, or a law firm, or a CPA or CPA firm that specializes in cases like yours, right? Because that means that they have both the knowledge and expertise. They've been able to pass down to their staff, and they have systems in place to work your case efficiently, okay? Like I said, they have experience with cases like yours, and their staff is knowledgeable of cases like yours, and they won't make mistakes on your case because they have that experience, and their firm is built to handle cases like yours, right? Every day, I think about how I can make my firm better to handle the cases that we serve, or the types of clients that we serve, which is folks with back tax debt. I don't have to think about systems and everything for all the other kind of stuff that I could do as a CPA, because I don't do that stuff. Okay, I don't do 401k plan audits. I don't do succession planning. I don't do trust and estate tax return and that whole planning, estate tax or estate planning and all that stuff, working with attorneys on that. I don't do it. We just focus on one thing, resolving everyday Americans and business owners' tax debt with the IRS in the states, so we can build systems around that and be the best tax resolution firm we can be. So to be honest, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter so much the professional designation or what letters the individual has after their name, okay? Be they JD, CPA, or EA, which is an enrolled agent. What matters is the degree of experience and specialization the professional has in helping people in similar situations as yours. Okay, that's really all that counts. Okay, I personally know excellent tax attorneys, as well as excellent CPAs and excellent EAs as well, for that matter, who handle tax resolution work. Okay, and I have also cleaned up very big messes from all three of those professionals as well: tax attorneys, CPAs, EAs. I mean, I'll tell you about one client, and this is not just to bash on attorneys in particular, but this is just one that pops up in my mind. We had a client who he had a tax attorney doing his tax returns. The tax attorney did them for years. And the client had been overseas for many years, so they took what's called the foreign earned income exclusion on Form 2555, basically saying they're out of the country more than 330 days a year. Client had a home, bought the home, sold the home, and the tax attorney tried to take the home sale gain exclusion on the home by not reporting the sale of the home, because it's like, well, it's excluded because it was his primary residence, so it's excluded. Of course, the IRS assessed the tax on the sale of that home because the tax attorney had filed this Form 2555 over all these years saying the taxpayer had been out of the country. How was the taxpayer simultaneously out of the country for the vast majority of the year, but also using the home as his primary residence? And then what the tax attorney tried to do was just file an amended return, right, to fix the problem. But that didn't work. We had to do an audit reconsideration for this guy. Okay, it couldn't be fixed with just an amended return. We had to do an audit reconsideration, show his basis, show the closing statements, big old stack of things we had to fax to the audit reconsideration unit to finally fix this guy's tax situation. Anyway, that's just one little thing, right? And I have stories like this about CPAs and EAs as well. It doesn't really matter the professional designation. What matters is their experience and their knowledge and their know-how of how to work the system. And folks, that doesn't come from the classroom, okay? I don't know if you ever sat in any accounting classes or tax classes or, tax law classes, in law school. I have sat in on some. When I was doing my master's in tax, I would sit in on the law school classes sometimes. They're not teaching you this stuff, okay? It's about experience and systems in place that the particular firm has to handle the case. Okay, that is my position on this. Feel free to disagree. I'm sure many of you will. I'll probably get some angry tax attorneys and CPAs and EAs, but that is frankly my opinion. Like I said, my name is Logan Alec. I am a CPA. I own Choice Tax Relief. If you'd like to reach out to us with your back tax problems, you can certainly do that. We're at choicetaxrelief.com. You can also call 866-8000-TAX. I have some other tax relief videos here on the left-hand side of your screen for your perusal. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.